I'm back in Peergrade, but where is peer review? Well, you can see here under the actual assignment that you're working on, you'll see peer grading closes in 5 days. That is where I need to click. It's not obvious. Remember, you submitted your work under submission. For peer review, you're going to work under the review tab. So click on review. And here we have an author whose account I'm borrowing, and I want to thank him for that, who's already completed all 3 peer reviews. So we're going to look at submission number 1. And now when you first start, you will see that you only can access submission number 1. The other 2 are locked. So it's only when you finish one peer review that you will be able to access the next one. However, be careful. You want to make sure you've really finished and done the best that you can before you go to the next submission. Now, let's look at, on the left-hand side is the work for submission 1 that this reviewer has been tasked with, entrusted with, and it's about vaccine logistics and cold chain management in areas with poor power supply in Nigeria. Okay, so that is what the author ostensibly is going to analyze. You can see here this seems to be filled in. My challenge is poor power supply, and then the question, how can I ensure vaccine delivery and preservations in the area with poor power supply? You can see this is tiny text. So step 1 that I recommend is make sure you download the actual work, and that it ends up in your download, so you need to open it up. And now I have it in Word. I can scroll it, I can make notes in it. Much more convenient to look at it this way than to try to read it in Peergrade. But it is convenient in some cases to have that on the left-hand side. Now, what's on the right-hand side? You should recognize the rubric. It's been put into a format that should be really easy to refer to. However, I still prefer to have the rubric here, the actual PDF document that we shared with you. And as you know, I'm not going to start with part 1. I'm going to start with part 2. My situation, and we're going to look at that section. So first recommendation, really important, is take the time to do a first read the entire project, so that you understand the author, you get a sense of who they are, what their level of competency, of expertise, just get a feel for the overall project. There's no shortcut here. You will have to take the time to read. And second recommendation is take the time to reread the rubric. You used it, hopefully, as you were developing your project. Now you're going to be using it to peer review. And in fact, pay particular attention to the yellow boxes, which contain instructions or questions, guiding questions specific for the reviewers. Now, this same information is here. So if you have a good connection, good internet connection, you can just refer to the rubric here. Everything or almost everything that you see in the right-hand side here, it corresponds to what you see here in the PDF document of the rubric. Now let's get down to it. So we're not going to evaluate the cover note. It is question 1 in the rubric here, but remember, it's only written after you've completed all the other parts of your situation analysis. And here, you are going to go to the next section, to my situation. And here, let's first look at what it says, what you should be looking for. So here I see there are 3 sentences. Most part in Nigeria. Let's go look in the Word document. That'll be easier. So let's see what's in part 2. Most part in Nigeria suffer from poor supply. So that's the situation. How can I ensure vaccine delivery and preservation? That's the question you want to answer. Finding an answer to this question would be of benefit to my facility and prevent huge loss due to poor data storage condition. Well, technically, the author here has answered, what is your challenge? Why is it important where you work? It affects the storage condition. What's specific about your local situation? Maybe that's the one. Yeah, and then what's the question and why and how would answer your question? So certainly it looks like the author has worked from this yellow text and has answered everything there. there are additional considerations in the rubric, but let's look at what the reviewer has said. So here on the scale, important challenge and question identified only require minor improvements in explaining the local situation. Now, okay, so here the reviewer seems to have made a mistake. This is not the section on data sources. It is a section on my situation. So national-based cold chain data may be utilized. That's not one of the questions. That would be in the data sources that would be relevant. So here the author, unfortunately, okay, you've told me that the reviewer says minor improvements in explaining the local situation are needed, but you haven't told me anything about what they should be. So this is not a useful review feedback so far for this point. What we really want you to do as the reviewer is not just to give the rating, which is an indication, but to explain it. And you can see here, as reviewer, explain your rating and give concrete and specific suggestions as to how the author can improve. And in fact, you'll see that there's a minimum number of words because we do want you, or characters, because we do want you to take the time to explain. So yes, so I agree with the rating here, but I think the additional comment should be very different. Now here, after the comment, you have the full details. So again, read through this, take the time to read it. It'll be the same for every project. So the first project that you review will take the most time because you need to really get inside your head. What is it that you're evaluating? This is not about giving your opinion, good or bad project or what have you. This is about really helping the author improve. Now let's go to the next section and see. All right, so here we have data sources, PAHO and UNICEF. Okay. I'm not sure if PAHO keeps statistics, which is the Pan American Health Organization, keeps statistics for Nigeria, but maybe they do in some areas. UNICEF certainly is relevant when it comes to cold chain, but at least two appropriate data sources, why they're the best ones. Now, remember, this is situation analysis. So if we want to analyze the situation, let's see. Yep. All right. So this is not. Yeah. Okay. I see the reviewer here is not doing the job they should be. So here you have two data sources: Pan American. Whoops. Let me just. Yeah. Pan American Health Organization and UNICEF. Okay. But remember, how is their data going to help you answer this question? How can I ensure vaccine delivery and preservation in areas of Quara with poor power supply? So UNICEF and PAHO may have guidance on cold chain and distribution of vaccines, but here we're trying to understand the root causes. Why are there power supply problems? So I'm not sure that looking at the guidance, you can look at the guidance all day and all night. I'm not sure that is going to help you answer why are there power supply problems in your area. Unfortunately, this is the type of challenge that probably depends on factors, determinants that are entirely extrinsic to immunization, that have to do with the power supply, so the electricity supply. There may be specific things about the immunization context. That's what we would want to get to, but we don't see any reference here. So the reviewer's comments here is really disappointed. So it says the data sources are mentioned, but you said it would require minor improvements. So as the author, I would ask you, reviewer, to tell me what are the minor improvements that are needed. And as what I would add is then I don't see how the reviewer's comments are helpful here. And your job is to help the author. So saying the data sources are mentioned, okay, so what? Okay, how does that help me as the author? You told me there are minor improvements needed. Even worse would have been to say excellent identification when that is clearly not the case. So again, read through the guidance here in order to make sure that you are actually addressing what matters. Now, question 4 is the most important because this is where you share your key findings. And in between question 3 or part 3, your data sources and your situation. Once you have your data sources and your situation, that is when you can analyze the situation using your data sources. So it's not about giving your opinion. We're going to see what the author did here, but let's go look. So here we have, okay, possible solution, alternative power generation, establishment of central storage location, ensure that the right number of vaccines are requested, poor funding, government policy, okay, limitations, okay. So what is the most likely answer to your question based on the data? I don't see the answer to the question. Remember, the question is, how can I ensure vaccine delivery? Okay, I see what the author has done here. So how can I ensure vaccine delivery despite these problems? Here are 3 solutions, and then here are limitations, poor funding, right. What we don't have is what we expect from situation analysis is why. Answering why are there these problems. Because to know whether an alternative power generation could help, such as solar-powered refrigerating set, we need to know, does that address the root cause? Because if it is, for example, that if it turns out that staff are not competent at handling power generation devices, then the worst thing you could do, you could set up a solar array, but if the people managing that don't know how to use it, it's not going to help. That's why we need analysis. So now let's see what the person has done. Okay, convincing findings. Okay, again, I think here we have a reviewer who clearly was in a hurry, requiring minor improvement to explain limitations. Okay, the described field-based problem situation, this doesn't even make sense. What are you saying? What are you telling the author? You said there are minor improvements. What are they? All right. And of course, we are checking the reviewer's comments. So things like this will get you disqualified from the situation analysis. Please do not do this. This is not helpful. Because here the author needs help. How do you get from the situation and the data sources to this, given that the data sources you're looking at guidance? What could so what data sources might have been helpful? So as the reviewer, I would want to suggest, well, your data sources looks like you're referring to guidance, and you can look at a UNICEF guidance on cold chain. You may find useful things to help you analyze the situation. But how you know about your situation, that's the data sources we're talking about. So the data sources could be, how do you know that the vaccines are going bad because they're not being refrigerated? Where is the records of the wastage of the lost vaccines, for example? So that's what we were hoping to see. Now, again, you have a lot of additional guidance here. Do read through that, and let's look at the next steps. So, all right. So here again, we have a reviewer that is not doing their job, and I'll explain why. But first, let's look at the next steps. Let me go to the actual Word document. And so this is very important. This is where you think through, okay, I found the root causes. These are my findings. This is why we have this situation. And these are the steps I can take. So here what I see are very generic steps. They're not specific. So building capacity for effective distribution. When did capacity become the problem? If I look at the findings, it is, well, actually, I don't know what happened. Why there is this problem, and that was the point of situation analysis. So building capacity, where is it that there's a capacity problem? Collaboration with government and non-governmental agencies. Okay, so that could be about government policies and corruption, but what kind of collaboration? Who does it? How do you do it? When do you do it? Those would make the steps specific and actionable. Right now, it's just vague and generic. Sure, collaborate with governmental and non-governmental agencies, but what does that actually mean? The role here, we've mentioned the role of government, but what is the role of non-governmental agencies? When did those come in? I don't see those in the situation. So again, the linkages between your situation, the data sources you examine, and then what you find, once you need to connect the dots between those three, and that gets you to the actual next steps. Now let's see what the reviewer has said. So specific plan of action needs to be mentioned. That's not a requirement in the next steps. And what makes these next steps compelling? So if you are going to say, for example, excellent next steps, you need to say why they are excellent. But at least here we have, if there's a minor improvement, I disagree. There's no request for a specific, except here, okay, so if they mean like specific plan of action, that these 3 points need to be more specific, then I would agree. And you could say, but if I'm the author, this doesn't help me. What I would want for the reviewer to do is to tell me, how do I make this plan of action, my next steps, more specific? And again, you have a lot of guidance here, which I encourage you to read. And now let's see, okay, the last one looks good, because what we want you to do now, one thing is, if you are going to cite, so guidance is not a data source, but I could see the argument being made. We need to be, again, we're trying to be practical. It's good that the author is looking at UNICEF guidance, and maybe there's a PAHO guidance on the topic to help them figure out what to do and how to understand, how to analyze the situation correctly. That's great. But then we need to know which guidance and how is that helping. Now, this is relevant to the references section. So here we have specific references. Okay, and here is actually the guidance, what cold chain, and the PAHO guidance as well. Okay, so that is a clear linkage. You see, I just didn't see it until reading this section. Remember, my first piece of advice was read the whole thing. I've done it stream of consciousness, looking at section by section, but obviously I could not reach the correct conclusion in order to give useful feedback until I have read the whole thing. Now, here there are 3 ideas cited for from the ideas engine with the ID numbers. That's excellent. And here, when I go here, let's see. So sources require minor improvements. Additional source of idea engine may be explored. So I disagree with the reviewer there. Why? Because we say at least one idea should be cited. So this person has put 3. That's very good. The only thing I would say in terms of minor improvements, and this is not a requirement, but it wouldn't even, so I would say these are excellent sources. I would put, however, if I choose excellent sources, I would say, these are obviously relevant. These are all about supply chain and cold management. This begs the question, so how did these ideas help you formulate innovative next steps? Because your next steps here are just, very generic. I don't understand exactly what you're going to do, when, how, and then this, the links to the UNICEF and PAHO pages, that's good too. I would ask, how have they actually helped you, even though that's technically outside the scope. So I certainly wouldn't take away a point from any of these, but I would put it, even if I say, in this case, I might give excellent sources. I think this is good, but I would say, here's what we would like to know. And the point here would be, that we would look at these and help the author, because the next step is going to be to make the final version better. So to take this project and make it better. Now, here you can see actually that this reviewer, Peergrade, recognizes that you haven't written as much as others, and encourages you to say more. There are 46 words in this review, so you do want to make sure you take the time. Remember, a colleague of yours, a fellow member of the movement, spent a lot of time on this project, putting it together. So you need to honor this project by giving it due consideration, taking the time to read it, review it, and please give constructive comments. We've seen in this review how this reviewer has been a little bit too quick on the draw. He could say that he's finished his reviews, but he hasn't done his job as a reviewer. And I hope that's different for these. Let me just have a quick look here. And this is not, of course, to stigmatize any one person, but I see there's sort of very short comments. We expect more than this, and your colleagues expect and need better feedback than what we see in this review in order to do their job.